Hello and welcome to CS Support Us, to the CS Support Us Youth Listening Session for Educators. Thank you for joining us today to learn how you can see and support children of incarcerated parents. I will now turn it over to Layla, who will start us off with the land acknowledgement.
Hi, my name is Layla Butcher, and I'll be giving the land acknowledgement today. Before I start this land acknowledgement, it's a bit different since we are scattered throughout the states and joined together by Zoom. I want to inform you that if you type in nativeland.ca into your web browser, you can find the land that you are currently living or working on. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who have contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some are brought against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building a mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. I am currently on the beautiful ancestral lands of the Southern Paiute people, but I am from Oakland, California, which is the land of the Chochenyo people. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us here today. Think about the systems such as our injustice system that has taken part in removal of families from their homes. Think about the way the land was once treated and held sacred. Remember the resiliency of Indigenous peoples. I encourage you when you leave here to continue to uncover such truths at any and all public events. Remember that you walk on sacred spaces. Lastly, let's take a moment to recognize the ancestors past, present, and future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Layla. I'm going to give a little bit of a background about CS Support Us. So CS Support Us, or SUSU Month, was launched in 2015 by the New York Initiative for Children of Incarcerated Parents, which is a special project of the Osborne Association. CS Support Us now lives year-round and culminates in October when we hold a month of awareness raising on social media, host community events, and celebrate young people's creative talents. Now we've grown into a national partnership, which has allowed us to work with a group of amazing partners to amplify the voices of youth who've experienced parental incarceration across the country. Now we'll see the SUSU promo video, which was created by this year's incredible youth team. We can't hear it.
I'm Ava, and I graduated with all A+.
I'm Aggie, and I am a double major in college.
I'm Annie, and I'm valedictorian.
I'm Leah, and I am a first-generation college student. All of us have experienced parental incarceration.
It does not define me.
It does not lessen my work.
It does not make me powerless.
It does not make me different from anyone else.
We are not alone. 1 in 14 kids experience parental incarceration. CS Support Us, or SUSU, raises awareness to increase support for youth like us and celebrates our accomplishments and creative talents.
This October, SUSU focuses on supporting children's educational success and well-being, from early childhood through college. Follow SUSU to learn directly from youth what helps and hinders our success.
You see us, now will you support us? If you experience something similar, connect with SUSU to share your wisdom and enter the SUSU Art Contest.
Remember to visit the SUSU website and follow SUSU on social media.
CS Support Us.
Now I'd like to share some statistics with you all. 1 in 2 people have experienced the incarceration of a close family member. That means many of you might have experienced something similar to what we will be discussing here today. 1 in 14 children have experienced parental incarceration during their childhood. Think of this in terms of a classroom. That means in any given classroom, it's likely there is at least one child who's experiencing parental incarceration. Due to the systemic racism baked into our criminal legal system, we incarcerate disproportionate numbers of people of color compared to white people. As a result, children of color experience the incarceration of a parent at even higher rates. A report released just last week by the Sentencing Project revealed that Black Americans are incarcerated in state prisons across the country at nearly 5 times the rate of whites, and Latinx people are 1.3 times as likely to be incarcerated than non-Latinx people. And I couldn't be more pleased to be a part of this group of wonderful youth who've experienced parental incarceration. That never stopped us from achieving. An achievement is anything that makes you proud. This can range from getting out of bed in the morning to discovering a new element. We are all on our own journey through life, and with that brings individual understanding and perspective. Similarly, each of our experiences is unique, making us each experts in our own experience with parental incarceration. We'd like to share our expertise with all of you in hopes of creating a more supportive educational environment than what we encountered. I will now turn it over to Annie to introduce the Bill of Rights.
Hello, my name is Annalisa. We will begin the conversation by reading the Children of Incarcerated Parents Bill of Rights. These are 8 rights created in 2005 by the Youth and San Francisco Children of Incarcerated Parents Partnership. While these rights are not legally binding, they serve as a roadmap for how to see and support young people who have ever had an incarcerated parent. Posting these Bill of Rights signals to students that you acknowledge that parental incarceration affects students and that they are not alone. Right 1, I have the right to be kept safe and informed at the time of my parents' arrest.
Number 2, I have the right to be heard when decisions are made about me.
Number 3, I have the right to be considered when decisions are being made about my parent.
Number 4, I have the right to be well cared for in my parents' absence.
Number 5, I have the right to speak with, see, and touch my parent.
Number 6, I have the right to support as I face my parents' incarceration.
Number 7, I have the right to not be judged, blamed, or labeled because my parent is incarcerated.
Number 8, I have the right to a lifelong relationship with my parent. And now I will turn it over to Isabel Coronado, who will moderate today's conversation.
Istre Stango, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I will be your moderator. And just an interesting little tidbit, 2 years ago, I was on the panel myself as a youth, giving recommendations in New York City. And we have a really long list, and I would suggest you go read those on what New York City, state, and local policymakers can do to better support children of incarcerated parents. But I also believe a lot of those policy recommendations could be used throughout the United States. But I'd like to let you guys know that I am a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation that is located in present-day Oklahoma. I've been a child of incarcerated parent advocate since 2017, when I finally decided to let it be known that I had experienced having an incarcerated mother. The stigma surrounding people who are formerly incarcerated is so harsh that their children are often feeling the impacts. I was one of those youth who had seen the evolution of my mother, and so I didn't want anyone to judge her because of her past. But today I'm educated that I'm not the only youth who has had an incarcerated parent, but that there are 10 million children who have had an incarcerated parent at some point in their life. And that's why we are here today, to listen to the experience of youth who have at some point been impacted by the criminal legal system in their life and educate educators on how we can be better supported. I think educating our educators is one of the most important issues to tackle because of the lifelong impact our educators have on us. And I would go even further to say its generational impacts. My grandfather is a survivor of the boarding school era. For those who don't know what the boarding school era is, then I suggest you go do further research on the issue after this webinar. But just as a quick lesson, it was a time during our US history when Native children were kidnapped from their families and tribal nations and forced to leave their language and traditions and families behind and learn English and English customs. The United States still is uncovering children's remains from boarding schools, and it's an issue we still haven't even scratched the surface on. But education has also been a beautiful tool for my family. My mother went on to law school and served our tribal citizens. I graduated with my master's degree in 2019, and it has helped my family break the generational cycle of poverty. That is why my hope for better understanding of our stories, you can be that supportive figure in the lives of children impacted by our unjust system. With that, I'm going to start the conversation by passing the mic and having everyone introduce themselves. Each panelist will say their name, the state they live in, their grade or highest achievement level, and one thing they're proud of. Ava L., would you like to go first?
For sure. So my name is Ava Lanteri. I am 20 years old. I got my undergraduate degree cum laude from Manhattanville College, and I live in Eastchester, New York. And an accomplishment of mine, something that I'm proud of, is finally being able to step out of survival mode and instead being in a space where I can do things not because I need to, but because I want to. And I will popcorn over to Ava M.
Hi, I am Ava M, and I'm located in Florida. I'm currently a freshman in high school, so ninth grade. And one thing I'm proud of is that I received a superior with distinction for playing the cello. And I'm going to popcorn it to Annie.
My name's Annalisa. I'm 17. I just graduated from high school. I'm in California. And one thing I am proud of is being an artist. I'll popcorn it over to Layla.
Hi, my name is Layla. I'm 18 years old and I'm currently in Las Vegas, Nevada. I am a first year college student, and one thing I am proud of is probably how far I've come despite my past. Oh, and I'm gonna popcorn it to Deshaun.
John Allen, and I'm from Albany, New York, and I graduated at Albany High School. And one thing I'm proud of is being able to make music and have others feel my music. And going over to Anaya.
Hello, my name's Anaya Phillips. I live in Maryland, and I'm a graduate student at George Washington University. And one thing I'm proud of is myself for being consistent and achieving goals that I set for myself.
I think Annalisa is the last. We're good? Great. So we're going to kick off this conversation with something that has in our prep session, we had several prep sessions before this panel, and several themes emerged from those prep sessions. And one of them is confidentiality. So I want to pose this question to Annalisa, Layla, Ava M, and Ava L. How important is it to you to keep confidentiality about your parents with teachers, student, and staff, and why? Let's go with you, Annalisa, first.
For me, it's important that my peers don't know unless I tell them because it's none of their business. However, I do think it could be beneficial for my parent to possibly tell a teacher so that they know how to better support me. And I don't think teachers should bring it up in class at all.
Thanks, Annalisa. How about you, Layla?
Personally, I see how confidentiality should be sort of a sacred thing in the lives of just SIPs in general. I definitely was big on confidentiality, but as I got older, it started to not be as important to me, just because I realized that This is the field of work that I want to do with my life, and I'm a part of so many organizations, and I speak on panels such as this one, and facilitate groups. So it's more so become a part of my life. And I'm very open about other people knowing about it and talking to me about it and helping others about it. So personally, confidentiality when it comes to that topic isn't something that I'm too big on, but I do have strict boundaries when it comes to it.
How about yourself, Ava Ann?
I think really it depends on your relationship with another person, because like depending on how well you know and how comfortable you are sharing with another person, there are going to be different levels of confidentiality. In general, I think that like while it is important for a child to feel like they are receiving the attention that they need, it's also extremely important that not to know that like not every child is as comfortable sharing, and that we need to respect their boundaries and like what they feel comfortable doing. And if a child does choose to share their experiences with you and does choose to lean on you a little bit, then you shouldn't take advantage of that. You should keep their experiences private, because they shared it with you because they trust you. And that's like the number one most important thing is trust. They trust you because you're there for them and you want to continue being there for them. You don't want to break that trust. I think in my personal experience, sharing my experiences with teachers has been helpful to me, because they can kind of understand my personal life and they can give me a little leeway if I need it. And you know, if you're not comfortable sharing your personal story with your teacher, it could be something that your parent does in a parent-teacher conference. But I think overall it has really helped, because I feel like my teachers know me a little bit better, and I have a connection with my teachers that I wouldn't otherwise necessarily have, because there would be a huge aspect of my life that they didn't know about. Again, everyone has different levels of comfort with sharing their personal experiences. And so really you should do what you think is best for you.
Absolutely. Ava L, would you like to add on?
For sure. So personally, for me, it was really important because growing up the way I did, authority was really scary. Having dealt with judgmental CPS workers and harsh police officers at such a young age, I developed an overwhelming fear that something bad would happen every time I encountered someone who said they were going to help me. And it became incredibly re-triggering to be told by an authority figure that they would help me. And for this reason, I never wanted people to know about my father's incarceration. And if they did, I'd prefer that they speak to me alone and ask how they can support me while respecting my wishes.
So after hearing that, I'm going to try after each question to give tips from what we've gained from these listening sessions and prep sessions, just to spell it out. And also we're going to follow up with these tips to educators later on with our thank you email. But for this first one, there's 3 tips for educators. 1 is share information about our situation only when you have our permission. Speak with us outside the presence of other students, and ask us how you can support us or offer services that you are aware of, rather than directly asking us about our incarcerated parent. Going to our second question, in our talks, several of you have mentioned the importance of a school counselor or supportive adult. What does a supportive school counselor or teacher look like to you? Anaya, would you go first?
Yes. So a supportive counselor is someone that you feel comfortable talking to, and somebody that really creates a safe space for the student to vent. And I feel like the safe space really has to be transparent, and that counselor or staff member, should really encourage the student to get in tune with their feelings about the entire situation. And a lot of, if you're able to have that type of session with the counselor and the student, I think it would be helpful if the counselor asks about the incarcerated parent, because a lot of times people forget about our parents when they go away, but we don't. So a lot of times our anxiousness or our fears that we deal with is from worrying about our parent, just how, a parent worries about their child every single day. We worry about our parents while they're away. So just really creating a safe place without judgment.
Also, Anaya, I know we had talked about the importance of really having a counselor there, especially when you are going through the situation right at that moment. I don't know at that time, like if you had that counselor right there, but if you did, do you think it was more helpful having the counselor there as soon as the arrest of your father, or was it easier to talk about it later on down the road?
So I didn't have a counselor at school personally because back then, when it happened, I wasn't really comfortable talking to anybody in school about it. I had a personal counselor or a therapist outside that me and my mom would actually go to. So because we were really adjusting to our new lives. And then my aunt is actually a therapist. So every summer it was like sessions where I was able to vent and release. And I started the therapy and like counseling like directly after my father's arrest. And it really helped. It really helped me release a lot of anger that I was feeling. Now, when I was in school, I do wish that I did have a counselor or a teacher that I can speak to about my father's incarceration. I feel like it would have just been another safe space for me during the school year because my aunt being a therapist, I only saw her during the summer. So you can only imagine during the school year, I was holding in so much until I could speak to her again to the next summer.
Annalisa, what are your thoughts on this?
I'd say one good thing that a counselor did for me was refer me to a program for children of incarcerated parents called Project What? And in this program, the youth would write about their experiences as children of incarcerated parents to raise awareness of the effects of parental incarceration on the children.
Can you also talk about the other project you're a part of?
Yeah, support it?
Yeah. Not only Project What, but I guess expand on what Project What is for those who don't know and would like to seek out that information.
Project What is a program, I think its only location is in Oakland, California. And as I said before, we write about our experiences as children of incarcerated parents. It is an extremely supportive environment, and it's like a paid after school program for the kids. So it was like my first job, and it was extremely helpful.
Okay. Ava L.
Hi again. So when I was in fourth grade, I had my favorite teacher to this day. She always saw me and was there for me when I needed help. She simply would observe and knew when I was having a hard time, to which she always responded with kindness and support. And then when I was in middle school, I had a strong relationship with my guidance counselor who always listened and gave gentle suggestions when I was unsure of what to do. But the only reason that I was connected with him was because I would get kicked out of class often, and the principal would send me to his office. So I definitely think that there needs to be a support person for children of incarcerated parents that they can access without having to be punished first.
Similar to you, Ava, I had a really supportive teacher when I was in third grade, when my mom was going through her prison sentence. The teacher knew that it was my grandma who was my primary caretaker, and so she would let me stay after school for 15 minutes longer because my grandma, that's what her work allowed. She wouldn't be able to come until that time after, and so that was super supportive. And just that small 15-minute window, because it helped my grandma so much in those efforts. And I really appreciate, I'm seeing the comments and I really appreciate the comment positive feedback, and let's just keep cheering on our young people. So for the third question, I'm gonna pose, and it's kind of a two-part question. First is, we often have to overcome the stigma of having an incarcerated parent. What's one thing you want someone to know about you to help break that stigma? But also the second part of this question is this particular stigma around that children of incarcerated parents are 7 times more likely to be incarcerated themselves. What's your reaction to that? Let's go with you first, Deshawn.
Thing I want people to know about me is that I have not been incarcerated before, and with having a parent that has been incarcerated, I've made a positive name for myself. Like, my dad wasn't able to graduate high school. I graduated high school. My dad didn't get a chance to go to college. I didn't graduate college, but I do have some experience, and I can be a positive role model to kids who have incarcerated parents. They don't have to feel like they are, you know, uh, they can go out and be great. So with that, I think that I can be a positive role model for the youth and tell them that it's still okay to pursue your dreams, even though you have an incarcerated parent. And for the second part, how does it make me feel? It definitely gets the blood boiling, but as motivation. And me having a had a incarcerated parent, I can definitely see that I used it as motivation to be able to do what I'm doing today, such as going out to be a mentor for the youth, showing my younger sister, that, because our dad was incarcerated, we don't have to live that life. We could still maintain positive things in our life.
Absolutely. Anaya, would you like to go next?
Sure. Can you please repeat the first part of the question?
Yes, the first part of the question is, what's something you want someone to know about you to help break that stigma?
So something I would share about me that breaks that stigma is that not only is my father currently incarcerated, but my biological mother was incarcerated many times. So, I didn't only have just one incarcerated parent, I had two. And, I'm just really proud of how much I overcame growing up. And when I think of the stigma of children of incarcerated parents are 7 times more likely to go to jail, or there's all these statistics on students like all of us who are here on the panel, it's really upsetting because it's like we're just being defined by the mistakes that our parents made, but the decisions that they made in their life has nothing to do with the lives that we're creating for ourselves. And, we're all of us here on the panel are living proof that, you can overcome any challenge that you've been faced with. And the biggest thing to remember is just that, your parents' mistake is not your mistake. Like, you are creating your own life and your own success.
Thanks for sharing, Naya. And I can't wait to see you keep growing. It's been great to see these last few sessions. Ava M., do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I think stigma is very obviously a large part of the reason why children of incarcerated parents are scared to share their family situation with others. They don't want to be judged, and they really don't want to have to deal with the ridicule and shame that, for the most part, and it's not how it should be, but it is how it is. That accompanies having an incarcerated parent. But at the end of the day, there is no real reason to stigmatize children for something that they have no control over. If they have an incarcerated parent, it's due to an action on their parent's behalf, but it has nothing to do with that child themselves. And also, being a child of an incarcerated parent doesn't mean that you are only a child of an incarcerated parent. Like all other children, children of incarcerated parents do multiple things and they have multifaceted personalities. Everyone does. For example, like I'm the child of an incarcerated parent, but I still play the cello. I'm the child of an incarcerated parent, but I draw, I paint. I'm the child of an incarcerated parent, but I'm still a dedicated, diligent high school student. There's so many parts of my personality that have nothing to do with the fact that my father went to prison. And I think that it's really unfair to portray us as being just like singularly the child of an incarcerated parent. Um, and then, when people predict that children of incarcerated parents are more likely to become incarcerated themselves, that's the same thing as saying, oh, your parents were doctors, so you're going to be a doctor. But people can't predict our future for us because everyone has different paths that they're going to take through life. Everyone makes their own decisions. Everyone has their own set of choices that they go through and they make based on their skills, their virtues. The people around them obviously influence them, but they don't define them. They don't tell them this is what you're going to be. And I think that as a child of an incarcerated parent, yes, that is a part of my identity, but it's not my future. It's not where I'm going, and that's not the only place I'll ever be. I have 100 different things I could do in my future, and being incarcerated is hopefully not one of them.
Thanks, Ava, for sharing that. That was really powerful. Layla, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So I agree with basically everything everyone said so far, but like the point that Anaya was making about how she not only had one but two incarcerated parents, that was also what my experience was like. On top of just not having my father in my life in general. And so my grandmother was my legal guardian and still is my legal guardian. And so as a child, my grandma had a job. She worked at my elementary school. So I got the question a lot of like, oh, are you adopted? And just a bunch of personal questions that they would aim more towards her rather than me since I was the child. But I got some questions from not only kids, but also adults too. And so I really wish that like debunking traditional typical home like stereotypes of like what a traditional like stereotypical house should look like. I feel like really debunking those stereotypes it would be beneficial to SIPs, and I feel like it would just be beneficial period because not everybody's home is going to look the same. A situation that it may look upsetting or it may look like victimizing or just it may not look good in the eyes of somebody else. It could be what's best for that child at the time. So I feel like just not frowning down on other people's situations and always trying to keep the best side of things is definitely something that should be more normalized.
Absolutely. Ava L.
Like Layla said, I basically agree with everything that everyone said on this topic already. But just to add all of that, both of my parents having been justice impacted was used against me by bullies and educators who told me that I'd be pregnant, incarcerated, and addicted to drugs by the age of 16. And those who didn't say it directly treated me as such. And this made me internalize that school was not for me and I didn't deserve to be treated like any other student, despite the fact that I was a straight A student. I graduated high school at 16 for survival. I didn't see it as this amazing accomplishment that everyone else saw. And then I was accepted to Manhattanville College on the day of my high school graduation. And I just went, like I said before, for what I saw as survival. And from that, I just really want to say that we deserve to accomplish things not out of survival, but because we recognize our potential and are supported by educators and those around us and who will help us to work towards our wildest dreams. And from this, I think it would be a really excellent idea to have a box in the classroom called How Are You Really, or How Are You Feeling Really? Where students can write down their thoughts and emotions. And not only would this be a great tool to understand how those who seem to be perfectly okay are truly doing, but it would also teach students the therapeutic method of writing down their feelings that I didn't learn until I was in college. And now you can't take a pen and paper away from me. But if I had learned that sooner, it really would have helped me a lot.
Thanks for sharing that tip. That's a really good tip, just in case if anybody missed it, but a box where it says, oh, how are you really doing? And kind of making it anonymous is one way educators can support children. And then we have a few tips on this topic, but a few that I really want to highlight is using humanizing language, such as parent or incarcerated parent, not inmate or felon. Administrators should encourage staff to create affirming spaces for us, include discussions of mass incarceration in curriculum, understand that most children succeed and we are not destined to follow in our parents' footsteps. Our parents do not define us. So moving on, for our fourth question, we have seen supportive groups in schools such as POPs the Club, which is a program meant to bring together children of incarcerated parents. What does a successful program like this need to bring in more youth? Layla, can you go first?
Yes, I would love to. So I'm a part of a program called Project Avery. And with Project Avery, they actually have a support group program within, I believe it's SF or San Francisco Unified. So in the San Francisco schools, they have their own version of Project Avery. I'm not too sure about the details of how recruitment works and everything, but I do know that the SF youth, especially during times of COVID, they have started to merge with just like the other sections of Project Avery in itself. And I have seen so many kids from those school programs, and I've seen them thriving, and I've seen the positive outcome that this program really has during schools. And I joined Project Avery outside of school, but I feel like if I had that support in school, I would have felt a lot more comfortable. But even through Avery, it gave me the strength to be able to feel comfortable even in school talking about my situation, which wasn't how it originally started out. School was never really seen as a safe space for me. But because I was able to make a safe space within myself, I was able to then not really care necessarily about where I was when I was talking about the situation. So just programs like that to really have somebody to support you and have your back at the end of the day will have a positive outcome, whether you can see it or not, whether that child is verbal about it or not. You'll be able to see it in their actions and everything else.
Yeah. Ava M., can you go on and also describe what Pops the Clubs is a little bit further in detail?
Yes, so Pops the Club is a high school program, and they go into the high schools and they just kind of provide a safe space for children who have been impacted by the justice system. So POPS is actually an acronym that stands for Pain of the Prison System. And they really just kind of make like a low pressure environment where you have the opportunity to express your feelings if you want to. And if you don't want to share, you don't have to. But mainly you get the feeling that you're not alone. There are other people out there who are going through the same thing as you. And I think that's one of like the main things that are super important in these kind of supportive youth groups is that you want to have the idea that you're not the only person going through having an incarcerated parent. And I think that's one of the most powerful things, because yes, you can go to a counselor and you can talk about your feelings. And yes, you can go to a teacher, a friend, and talk about how your incarceration has impacted you. But there's nothing that's quite like knowing that you're not the only person who's dealing with this struggle, because that kind of like is like, okay, this is hard for me, but it's also hard for other people. So you don't feel so bad. And it also takes away a lot of the stigma. Like if you know that everyone else is doing the same thing that you're doing, you might feel like to you that that's not something that you want. But if everyone else is doing it, then you feel you have a group of people who you can kind of rely on. And I think that's something that these youth groups really do well to promote. And they help us to have like more of a family and more of a connection to other people who are like us.
Thanks, Ava. Also, I wanted to mention, because I saw it in the chat, someone mentioned Girl Scouts Beyond Bars. That's actually a program that I had participated in when I was when my mother was incarcerated, which is a program where they take girls to go see their women in prisons and their mothers in prisons, and have several different resources and fun activities to do throughout the year. And I think for me, it was super helpful to have that program service, even though it's outside the educational setting, because it helped me go see my mom at that time. I don't know, for those who may not have experienced having an incarcerated loved one, that a lot of these times these prisons are in rural locations. And so it does take some time to go visit, because some people drive 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, even more hours just to go visit. And it's a whole day thing. And so just for educators to understand that, hey, when we come in on Monday and we're tired, that could very much be a reason why. A few other tips I would like to share is exploring groups and after school programs. Such as we mentioned, Popsicle Club, Like What Project, Project Avery, Youth Action Council. Like, these names are neutral names, so it's kind of more inviting for youth to come and join them, because it doesn't necessarily out them or identify them, and which makes it more and inviting in the long run. And then funding arts and other programs to support our healing and growth. Counseling is great and it's needed, but also as youth, I think music and poetry and all these other activities have been really helpful as well. So moving on, in schools, participating in parent holidays can be especially difficult, as you can imagine. So I want to know from Ava M, Anaya, and Layla, what your thoughts are on expanding the definition of family. Ava M, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think this is an issue that goes way beyond having a child, like just being a child of an incarcerated parent. Parent-related holidays are difficult for many people because, for the most part, you don't have the two-parent, mother and father, perfect household life. Usually there's something going on, even if it's just as simple as like, oh, it's Mother's Day and all the mothers are invited, but my mom has to go to work today. That might be super simple, but then when you go to school, your mom's not able to come there and be there for you on those days. And I think that the definition of a family, especially in today's world, expands more than just having a mom and a dad in your life. You could have two moms or two dads, and we shouldn't be closed off to the perfect, like, stereotypical family life just because we have holidays like Mother's Day and Father's Day that we've celebrated for so long. And one way that we can get around this is like saying, instead of bring your mother to school today, bring your mother figure to school today. Bring someone who fulfills that role in your life, who's been there to support you, that you feel who's earned their privilege to come and support you at school. I think this way, like, you can feel more included in activities, because you don't want to be the person whose parent can't come. And so you can just like, oh, sit with their family because their family's here today. Yours is not, but you can just sit with their family. That's not really the way to make a child feel special. And also, I think that's something that causes a lot of other children to ask questions because they're like, oh, where's your mom? Why isn't she here today? And I think that the definition of a family goes beyond just like the biological bonds that you share with a person. It's really more of the emotional and the spiritual bonds that you share with a person, where you know that they've been there to help you through times that haven't been so easy for you, and you would do the same for them. And I think that's more important than being just biologically related.
Thanks, Eva. Anaya, would you like to speak on your experience?
Yes, so I completely agree with everything that Ava M was just saying. I remember back in elementary school, I went to a private school, a Christian school. So every Mother's Day, every Father's Day, we would have these events, muffins for mom or donuts for dads. And my father was the father who showed up all the time to every event if it had to do with him being there. And it was one point where my father couldn't come anymore. And, that's really awkward being so young because now I'm getting questions from my classmates like, oh, where's Mr. Phillips this year? Or, oh, where's your dad? And so I just really encourage, like, if school systems still, encourage parents to come in for Father's Day or Mother's Day, just don't limit that to a guardian or a biological, I'm sorry, you don't have to limit it to only a parent or a biological parent. It can be a motherly figure or a fatherly figure or, a brother, a sister, just somebody who's like important to you and really, can fill that role for you because not everybody's parent can make it. And it doesn't only have to be because they're incarcerated. Like a lot of people go through, different struggles. You don't know what anybody's going through. So just only making it for moms or dads can be kind of difficult. And it could also be triggering for the student when they're looking at all the families around. And, I'm looking at the students next to me with their dad and, you're thinking about where your father actually is or.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your story. Layla, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So, like both Anaya and Ava said, like I agree with everything they said. Again, like Anaya, I also went to a Christian private school for elementary, and they did do, like I can stand by that statement. They always did a whole lot of mother-daughter and like father events, and so there was they would do yearly this like mother-daughter tea party. And my grandma would always take me, which I was like so thankful for. Like thinking back on it, of course, I didn't see it as that big of a deal when I was younger. But now, like looking back on it, like I'm super thankful for her. Even though she's like, I had a daughter. I've already been through this stage. Like, why am I going back through this? But she would always take me every year. And she would act like that motherly figure for me, especially since she was my legal guardian. But seeing like everybody else with their actual mothers, it was kind of like and again, in the moment, never really thought about it. But the more I think on it when I'm older, I'm like, okay, it was a little like I could see how I was feeling that way at the time. I just didn't know what it was that I was feeling, seeing everybody else. It's like, okay, where's my mom? Or they would do, mother, not in school. I don't remember having any particular like father-daughter events at school. But I was a part of, took karate classes at a dojo near my house. And they would have like father-daughter workout days, or they would invite the parents like at the end of the class, just like randomly do like random little workout challenges with us since I was super young. And there was one time where all the dads were like doing push-ups with the kids sitting on their backs. And I was like, of course, I didn't have my, I didn't have my father, and I lived with my grandma and my grandpa, but my grandma was the one who, ran me to and from school, to karate, to home, to everywhere. But also like my grandfather, he's older. He's not doing push-ups with nobody sitting on his back. So of course, like again, super thankful for the support systems that I had. My instructor, my karate instructor, he knows the background of my life. He's a close family friend now, and he would always sit in as that father figure. And he would do the push-ups with me on his back. And so it always made me feel included. And again, thinking back on it, I'm always able to see the bright side of how like, wow, like they didn't have to do that for me. And I'm super appreciative that the people in my life did have enough compassion and empathy to be like, well, let me not let this little girl standing on the sidelines feel left out. But it's like, wow, like I wish I did have that actually fatherly figure, because then it's like, okay, well, where's your dad? Why is the karate instructor doing this with you? And then it's like, mind your business. So it was good to, yeah, I feel like that's again, the whole stigma around debunking stereotypical households. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that powerful story. And it really does come to mind your business. The next one is so in this time, this crazy time we're in COVID, once COVID hit, a lot of prisons closed down for visiting. And so a lot of children out here haven't seen their parents in, going on 2 years. But I want to know and understand more, how's COVID intensified your experience? And we'll go back to Anaya first.
Okay, yes. So my father currently is still incarcerated, and because of COVID, I haven't been able to really visit him, but we talk on the phone all the time. And I would always visit him when I was in undergraduate school. I was went to school in Atlanta, so he wasn't that far away. He was like a few states or a state over, and I made sure I always saw him like before the school year picked up and before I went away for an internship or a vacation or summer break. So, with COVID now, I haven't seen him since February 2020. But, I'm happy I still get to communicate with him. It's not really that hard for me that I haven't seen him because, when your parent is incarcerated, it's just a lot of things you have to factor in to get to them, such as, travel, hotels, having money during the visit so you can get them, some snacks they might like. It's just a lot that goes into it. So it's not my first time not seeing him in over a year. That's unfortunate. I wish I could see him, all the time, or more often. But I'm just really grateful for, we're able to email each other. We talk on the phone all the time. So it's affected the visitation for us, but our relationship is still really good and we still talk all the time.
Eva M., how about yourself?
I think COVID has definitely changed like what it means to have an incarcerated parent. For me, like visiting was my favorite way to communicate with my dad because I actually got to see him. Like when you're on a phone call or when you're writing an email, obviously, you're still communicating with your incarcerated parent, but it's different than having a physical interaction with a person. There's just not that, like, especially when you're young, being able to see another person is just that there's a lot that there's a lot that meaning behind that. And I think communication is obviously essential in any bond. And so to keep up my bond with my father while he was incarcerated during COVID, I had to like really look to other ways to communicate with him, whether that was like, phone calls, emails. And like for phone calls, I have two other brothers. We all want to talk with my father on the phone. And, during a visit, you just have more time. Even if it's like the difference between like 2 or 3 hours versus 15 minutes, that makes a really big difference when you're trying to convey what's happened like over the last week, the last month with your incarcerated parent. And I think that COVID has really made it like a lot harder to communicate when your parent is in the prison. And I think it's just a really big change.
Absolutely. There's lots of big change when you can't physically hug and kiss your parent. A few tips for educators is be extra compassionate. Students seem distracted, withdrawn, or not engaged. And when speaking about how COVID is affecting us all, including the students with incarcerated parents, are very worried about their parents' well-being during this time. So we're coming back almost to the end here, and I want to people to start thinking about the struggles that we have once our parents are out, and what the real experience of reentry once our parents are home. Layla, can you go first?
Yeah, no problem. So For this topic, I feel like it's always something like since I work in the support groups, I work with a lot of younger children. And so they always ask me like, what is it like? And like, do you have any tips or tricks? And I'm just like, I try to break it to them as easy as possible because it hit me like a dump truck. It hit me like a ton of bricks. When my mother was released from prison, I had this whole like idea of how everything was going to be. Like, I thought everything was going to like continue, like no time had passed. You know, she came, she surprised me at school. Everything was just jolly, dandy, good. And then everything went south so fast. It all took a turn. It went left. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Especially since she got out maybe like the last month of school going of 8th grade. And then like there was the summer when everything went left. And then boom, I started my freshman year of high school. And I was like, all right, like this is a lot. And you know, starting high school itself is like already a lot on its own. And so I was just like, oh my God, like what do I do here? And so just something I always tell the youth is like, everything is not going to play out the way you may think it will. And that is okay. Everything is able to be worked out. You know, my mother was released. We had contact for maybe, we were starting to build our bond for maybe a few months, like throughout the summer. And then I didn't talk to her for maybe like 3.5 years-ish. And it was just, it was immediate, no phone calls, no text messages. It was all like super, like, it was no easing into it. It just happened. And then we kind of started talking again, eased back into it. And now we have a better relationship, but it still goes sideways all the time. It goes left so fast. And I'm like, it's something about the time that has passed that I feel like myself, and it's my personality and her personality, they clash a lot. And so trying to, since we didn't have all that time to really figure out how to connect our personalities together, I guess you could say, trying to do that now, especially now that I'm older and I'm 18 and I'm very much independent. I'm an independent person and I like it that way. And so having, like, of course I respect my elders, I respect my parents, but having certain people tell me what to do, it's like, all right. It's like, I feel like certain things, because you've missed so much time, you don't have a say so in, and it feels wrong to say because you are my mother and you are my father. And it's like, it feels wrong, but that's how I feel. And sometimes things get a little uncomfortably mixed up. So just, there will be a lot of challenges. There will be a lot, I don't even know. You're going to go through emotions. You're going to go through like this mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Everything is going to happen to you when your incarcerated loved one gets out, or like you guys start to reconnect. And it's just, it was hard. And sometimes I've used the phrase, it was easier when they were still incarcerated to maintain that relationship. Because, when my mother wasn't talking to me and I would call every day. I would call for like at the beginning, I would call every day. And it was easier knowing that she wasn't answering, or I couldn't just call her because she was incarcerated, versus knowing that she's willingly not answering. And that like she sees the phone ringing, she just doesn't want to pick up. And so something about that was it was more settling, I guess you could say. So like I said, you're gonna feel a lot mentally, emotionally, etc. But I worked through it. I'm still working through it. But I'm better than I was in the beginning. And that's really all you can be. You can just work on yourself and continue to work with that relationship and try it. But there are a lot of times where I'm like, I'm done trying. Like at this point, it's your responsibility. I'm the child and you're the adult, or you're the parent and I'm the child, and I've done everything on my part. And now it's time for you to do stuff on your part. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, Layla, you really were super honest and vulnerable here. And I think it's brought to light what many people think, like, oh, you're reunited with your parent, case closed, you're great. And I think that people really don't understand, like, actually, there's a lot of trauma that goes into this. We're intertwined in a system that doesn't just accept people after they've served their time. Not only are our parents going to have to deal with mental health issues, but they're also trying to find housing, a job, childcare, navigating a relationship with their child. And those things take years. because for like many jobs, they won't accept you unless it's 7 years past your conviction. And there's just so many different barriers that our parents and consequently we have to endure too, when it comes to reentry. But for myself, I know when my mom was released from prison, she at the time it was a little embarrassed because she came to my school, and nobody understood why I was freaking out, like why was I crying and so happy. And I think I just recently asked, I was like, why'd you come to my school? And she was just saying, I just couldn't wait to come see you. Like I just had to come as soon as I could and pick you up. And so it was a really good day for myself, because we were able to keep our connection going, and it didn't feel like at the time the healing yet, because that was back. I was 10 when she was released, and now I'm 25, and we're still going through those issues of communication and everything that Layla just mentioned. This is a lifelong issue, and until our criminal legal system is fixed, or somehow find better ways for the system, those issues persist for years. Deshaun, can you wrap us up in this question?
Definitely. With re-entry, it's definitely tough because, well, I've dealt with multiple re-entries by the same parent. So each re-entry, it felt different, but it was hard to, it's still hard to like gain the relationship that you actually want, because you have not spent the time and you have not really got to like fill out your parent as much as you wanted to. And another thing too, I feel like my dad is more so feels left out with me and my mom's relationship, because he feels like I tend to her more, which is true, but I've spent my whole life with her. She's seen everything that I've done first. She's been on my first basketball game, first football game. She's seen my first scratch, everything. So it's hard for reentry because you don't know what to expect. And with multiple reentries, like I said, it was different each time. You just don't know what to expect each time. So it's always something different, but it's hard to manage with it, especially at a young age. And when my dad was first released, I was only 8 years old, and his first sentence was 8 years. So it was kind of rough for me to understand like what relationship we actually had. And it was easier to have that relationship with my mother because, like I said, she was always there for me, and she understood and noticed everything that I was feeling. However, I was dealing with my dad being incarcerated, and I couldn't go to him and talk to him about that stuff because he was the one that was incarcerated. So I always leaned on my mother, and she's definitely did a great job with me. But yeah, reentry is definitely tough, and like Layla was saying, it hits like a dump truck because you just don't know what to expect, and you don't know if the relationship is going to be good or bad. And being 23 now, like me and my dad, we still go through hardships and stuff, even though we're trying to make our relationship better, but it's still rough. But we're getting there.
Thanks, Neil. So I have one more question before we go to Q&A. Of course, everybody in attendance, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat. And please, let's be mindful of boundaries when asking questions. We just want everybody to feel safe and supported here. So lastly, the topic of schools and school safety officers, I really want to make the connection between how does it make us feel when we see monitors and school resource officers in our schools. Ava L., I want to go to you first because you yesterday made a really great point about the triggers that it brings up. And so I would like to give you the floor to further expand on that.
Are you sure it was me?
It wasn't you.
It might not have been me, but I can speak on that. So I definitely, my school was very low security, and I definitely got along really well with the security officers that were there, mainly because of similar reasons that you were saying before, as to how your teacher helped you out. I got to hang out with them after hours when school was supposed to be closed because my parents weren't there to pick me up yet, or whoever was picking me up wasn't there yet. But I definitely think that having those punishments in school, especially what I was faced with, my only space to speak freely and share my thoughts was in school, because at home it was taking care of my parents or my sisters and making sure that they were okay, and it was never about me. So my only space was school, and constantly I would just talk over teachers or continue my conversation because that was my only space for it, and that would just result in me getting kicked out. And I had teachers like follow me around to call me to the principal's office and say that I was leaving school early, like, and they would call my parents. My parents would be like, okay, and like, let her do that, that's what she's doing. But it really just seemed to be a really strong sense of control that these teachers would want to have. And it's came across as them saying they were trying to be there for my safety and protect me and look out for me. But that wasn't at all what they were doing in reality. And I think that that's a really hard truth about what is seen and normalized as safety and protecting us, when in reality, all it's doing is adding to the harm.
Thanks, Ava L. Is there anybody else that wants to hit on this?
What was the full question again? I'm sorry.
Yes, how does seeing safety officers in our schools make you feel?
Okay, so the high school that I graduated from, we had police officers that would patrol outside of the building from the morning time to when we got out. And when we had to check in for school in the morning, we had to put our stuff in a little buckets, send it through them monitors. Then they would check us, make sure we didn't have any weapons. And I don't know, that just didn't feel like a safe space. Especially, you know, when I went to go see my father, and basically that was the same qualities that we had to go by. So I felt like, I don't know, it was more like of control more than like being in a safe space. Like they were able to check us, see what we had on us. I mean, I know that there's like, in where I'm from, like there's a high like level of crime where I'm at, but they can put other things into perspective other than police officers that's, you know, checking us every time we check in for school in the morning, or like for instance for seniors we could leave for lunch, but when we come back we still had to be checked again. So yeah, it just didn't feel safe. Like, I mean, regardless, after that we go to school, live our school life or whatever, but at the end of the day we still have to be checked. In the morning we have to be checked in for lunch. So it just felt like it was more controlled rather than a safe space for us.
Absolutely. And I want to go over to one of the questions in the chat about how can libraries and librarians support youth with incarcerated parents. And actually, I feel like this goes beyond just librarians, but I really want to hit on that too. But school nurses, coaches, lunch ladies, like they all have at some point come in contact into our lives and can be more supportive of us. But I saw that Ava L, I think you wanted to say something here.
So this actually, I saw the question in the chat, and it actually really reminded me of a big part of my childhood that I had totally forgotten. The libraries and librarians actually helped me so much during my dad's incarceration, and then when my mom was arrested as well. It was just my safe place. So I have dyslexia, and a big part of how I've been able to overcome dyslexia, and obviously it's still a challenge for me every day, but helped me to overcome some of the struggles with it, was reading all the time. So when I was little, I was constantly reading, and just the idea of like being able to escape into some other world where you're not living the reality that you're living, that can be incredibly harmful at times, and just, you know, being able to have that safe space in books is really amazing. And I think I definitely had some librarians that weren't so understanding of me getting really excited about the books and talking a little bit too loudly about them. But I think that the librarians who were there to really encourage my desire to read and just help me find books that were interesting to me. You know, I definitely think that there's a really important way that you can support a kid in a library with who is affected by parental incarceration without directly addressing the incarceration of their parent. And this kind of goes back to what Ava M was saying before, where we are totally different than our parents' incarceration. That one experience does not define us in the slightest bit. And yes, my dad was incarcerated, but I also love reading books, and that interest of mine could definitely be supported by librarians and libraries that are just interested to support us and see the excitement of a little kid in a library and saying, hey, maybe this book would be really cool for you. Because like I said, that escape can be really important.
Very true points. Layla, I think you have something to add.
Yeah, just like when you were talking about you were mentioning librarians, and you also said like people who like serve the lunch at schools and stuff like that. There is one quick story. There was one man who worked at my middle school, and he used to serve the lunches and everything. And so I had a cousin that I went to middle school with. We were like best friends. And I was in the lunch line, and we were just talking, and I don't even know what I was talking about, but it had to be something about like my family life and just home life. And um, I guess he overheard me, because the next day he had like put this little note on my lunch, and he like set aside a cookie for me, and he just wrote like, I hear you. And like, I guess he was also the child of an incarcerated parent, and he was like, I know your experience. And so every now and then he would like set aside cookies for me, and like he'd randomly give me a cookie or something like that. And I just thought it was the sweetest little thing. And it was just like the fact that he could see himself, like younger self in me, was like the sweetest thing. And then I'm a competitive dancer, and so I guess, and next to my studio there's a like a bingo hall, and I one day I was coming out of practice and I saw him there, and it was like after middle school. I was in high school by this point, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And so that just like rekindling of like a catch up moment that we were having. And like I told him, and I was like, I remember you used to always slide me cookies, and I was like, I appreciate you so much. Like, one, because you never know when somebody's having an off day, whether it's because of like family life, school, just maybe they just didn't want to be there. Like, you never know. So I was like, he made school a lot more tolerable. And just like little, it's always the little things. So like, I know personally, I always try to do little things for people. That like you could, I don't know, anything could really brighten the day. Cause I know when people do little things for me, it's definitely like, it makes me happy. Like, oh, you thought of me. So yeah, just little things always help out.
Absolutely, even the lunch ladies. Also, I don't know if everybody saw in the chat, CS Support Us website also has resource toolkit with books. But I also want to shout out my good friend Ebony Underwood and her organization, We Got Us Now. They also have a resource list on their website with books, children's books that are age appropriate, that can be put out in libraries, and I highly recommend having those out for students to read. Coming up and trying to get through these last few questions. Mental health. I see a question here on how did having an incarcerated parent affect your mental health? And that was asked by Rachel Flam. If anybody feels comfortable answering that, I welcome.
I can answer that. So from a young age, I had been already dealing with depression and anxiety, but when my parent did get incarcerated, my anxiety levels went through the roof, and so did my depression. So I became kind of like extremely catatonic. I withdrew from like friends and everybody, and I was just really like down in a terrible place. And even like later when he was released, I had put up this kind of wall of protection for myself because I couldn't believe that he'd been ripped away from my life like the way he had. And so I couldn't believe that he'd just been brought back out of seemingly nowhere. I didn't know what was going on. And so it was like extremely hard for me, and it really messed up our relationship for a while.
Yeah, I was also going to comment on that. So I feel like from a young age, it didn't, so like Annie, I did have, I don't know, it was never diagnosed, but I mean, when you necessarily, I wouldn't say I had anxiety, but I definitely felt anxious a lot of the time. Um, but so like when I was younger, um, say I was like, I don't know, outside playing with my friends, or I was on doing something, some activity. And, when a parent or whoever calls um, a, from jail or prison, they call. If you don't answer, you don't answer. And you just got to wait till the next time they can call. And so if I was not there to answer the phone, and if I was not there to talk to my mom, I like I don't know, I flipped out. And it was such a thing. Like I would cry. I would have this whole like situation like, oh my God, I should have been here. I shouldn't have been out, like whatever I was doing. And it was a really traumatized. Now that I think about it, it was super traumatizing to like have missed that phone call. Or every time I hear that house phone ring, because I was raised with my grandparents, so yes, house phones everywhere. And every time I hear that house phone ring, like that's the first thing I'm running to. I'm checking the caller ID. I'm trying to know like who is calling. And it hurt so bad, like in my little tiny heart, to know that I missed a call. And it's like, oh my God. Or in my letters, um, like my letters, she would write me letters. And in my letters, she'd be like, oh yeah, like please write me back or something like that. And it's not that I wasn't writing her back. It's just like, I'm a little kid. Like, do you know how much work it is to try to get a little kid to sit there and write about like their last month or week or whatever they did? And that's just like, I didn't have the attention span to sit there and write and read. And when I was younger, I hated writing and reading. Like, it wasn't something I enjoyed doing. And so, like, it just took too much to get me to do it. And so, and thinking like I have all her letters saved. And so like reading back on them, I'm like, why didn't I write her? Like I felt so bad about it. And so just throughout time, that definitely took a toll on me. And I was like just missing those phone calls, and like it just, and even after she was released, still hearing a house phone, I'm thinking somebody from jail or prison is calling me. And it was just that like sound association. Like, okay, I'm a psychology major. So now I like know all the terms for everything. And I'm like, yeah, like just associating everything with something else. It's kind of crazy. And then when she was released and we didn't have too good of a relationship, but just knowing like speaking on panels, and like I'm on a few podcasts and I have a few like lectures and panels that are out there just for anybody to look up, like search up my name and you could probably find something. And so it's like knowing that one day she could probably just search up my name and hear me. I don't know if she would consider this, talking smack, but I don't know how she would feel about me talking about her. But I'm like, this is what I do with my life. Like, this is my field of work. And so I don't know. I feel like just, and so there's always that in the back of my mind, like, ooh, how's she gonna feel if she heard me talking about this or something like that? So even now, it still has an effect on my mental health, and especially in that time period where I knew she was out there, yet for some reason we weren't talking. It was like every day I was like, dang. And sometimes I make like little like coping jokes, like, and that's something that I feel like I need to work on. Like I'll crack a joke about like not having a dad or something, and I'm like, oh, see, let me stop, because I was like, I never know what I can say that may seem like, oh, funny to me, just because of how I've dealt with my own situation that may hit hard for somebody else. So I'm like, oh, I didn't mean that. Like I'll correct myself so fast. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand, Leila. I think also for myself, I don't know how plausible this is, but when I was going through that, my grandma had got me a dog from the shelter, and I know there is such a thing as pet therapy now, they call it, but maybe having those more in schools would be another idea, because I don't know how much parents would like the idea of everybody getting a pet, a dog or a cat for everyone. But moving on to our last question. And really we have time for maybe one or two of you guys to answer. And if anybody wants to follow up, the CS Support Us website is there. Please follow up with this. But I really want to get to this last question because it's a really great question. Since half of all children with incarcerated parents are under 9, with many of them in early childhood programs, what would you say to a 5 or 6-year-old about dealing with this? And how can caregivers work with schools to best support young children? There's anybody, Ava L, I saw you go off mute.
So when my dad was incarcerated, I was actually 6 years old. And then when my mom was arrested, I was 9 years old. So to the 6-year-old me, I have a lot to say, but to keep it brief, I would say that you are not alone because you feel like you are. And I would say that you're amazing and never stop believing in yourself. I think that to kind of in contrast with the mental health question, it really affected me long term. And that's because I was so young. I had no idea what was happening, but I also did know what was happening at the same time. Like it's just really important to allow the kid to know, especially because you're so young, that you do have some sort of control over what's happening. You can be helped. You can find some support, like you're a kid and all you have at the end of the day is the people who live in the house with you, because that's who you get. That's who's right there. That's who's there for you. And that's your support system. It's not like you can walk over to your friend's house at 6 or 5 years old. So just really providing that support to them and just, giving them a say in what's happening, even if it's, what do you want to eat today?
Thanks. I'm going to go to Anaya and Layla, and then we're going to start wrapping it up.
Yes, so to respond to this question, so I was 9. I just turned 9 years old when my father was incarcerated, and I also have 2 younger sisters, and I'm trying to think how old they were. The youngest one wasn't even 1 yet, and I believe the middle one, she had to be like 3. So we were all really young, and me and my mom were actually talking about this, last week, and it was really different for each of us to deal with his incarceration because we were all such different ages, and our relationship was different with him because, obviously I have been around for the longest. So I feel like his incarceration really hit me the hardest. And so with my younger sisters, they were just kind of, building that relationship with our father. And so for them, just how I dealt with it, they also had to deal with it too. Like we all knew where our father's was because we all had to visit him. And for caregivers, I would work with the child, just how you work with the 9-year-old, you work with the 5 or 6-year-old. Like we all have, emotions. We all have like the same, like, feelings of a parent being incarcerated. So maybe you'll have to explain to them differently. I know one of my younger sisters, she was aware of like our father was incarcerated, but she wasn't aware that, you don't speak about that to everyone. So I guess you would talk to a 2-year-old different the way you would talk to a 9-year-old, but it's the same situation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Layla, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, so I was just going to talk about how, I work with children, specifically children of incarcerated parents, in the support group Project Avery. And so I did grow up in the program. I started when I was 7, and I went through the children's program, and then I went through the teen program, which is, I believe, like 13 to 16 or 17-ish, more like 16. And now I work in I'm an associate counselor. And the whole goal of Project Avery is to come full cycle and to kind of make that circle so that you grow up and then you turn around and you teach the next generation. And so what I learned from being that kid and looking up to who was like counselors when I was little is just, they would always tell me like, we're all here for the same reasons. So they're like, never, ever feel uncomfortable saying what you want to say, never feeling comfortable speaking about your experience, because I understand if I haven't been in the same situation, I've been in a similar one. And so that's what they would always tell me. And so now I turn around, now that I always looked up to them. Like I always wanted to be that counselor. So now that I am that counselor and I can turn around and be to these kids, like you can talk to me about anything. Like these kids, I think of them as like my little brothers and sisters. A lot of my cousins and like other people in my family, because unfortunately parental incarceration is a thing in my family. They are a part of the program too. And I'm just like, everybody needs to be a part of this program. And I talk to the kids so much. And I'm like, I make that comfortable space for them, like to talk about anything they want. Incarceration, they can talk about what they ate for dinner. They can talk about anything. Like, I don't care. Just like, if you can tell me one thing, you could tell me another thing. Like the conversations that I have with these children will go from one point to another so fast. And I feel like that is such a great thing because like it shows how comfortable they feel. So like if you can make a loving atmosphere just by listening, because a lot of these kids don't have anyone to listen to them, or anyone who really cares about what they're saying. You know, you can listen to anything, but if you really care, like you're not hearing them. Like you have to be able to hear them, and you have to be able to, if they want feedback, give them feedback. If they want to just talk, let them just talk. So I feel like that's definitely what I'd let them know. Like, you can talk to me about anything. You can confide in me. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to be here to hear you. I'm going to be here to give you advice if that's what you want, or if not. So.
Thank you so much, Layla. So before you get rid of me as moderator, I wanted to drop some of my information and the website where you can find more stuff written around children of incarcerated parents from a former child of incarcerated parent. And then wanted to leave off with a few more things before I pass it on to Ava and before she really closes us out. Is first off, thank you guys for attending. Thank you to the panelists for attending, and thank you to Osborne for making this happen and all the partners. And if you are an attendee and you're feeling uneasy, don't look away. There's so many supportive systems for you to continue doing the work that needs to be done. And if you're leaving inspired today, continue the work. Go to the CS Support Us website and read the educator toolkit. There's so many resources there. And then also next week, same date, same day, Tuesday of next week, there's going to be a panel for educators on educators speaking to educators. And so I highly recommend you guys attend that listening session as well. So thank you so much, Mado, and I hope everybody has a great day. Ava M., facility you.
Yes. So first and foremost, I would like to thank everyone for coming today. It really means a lot to all of us that you're able to be here and that you're listening to our stories and us sharing our experiences. Also, I would love to give a shout out to all the people in the comments who are just being so supportive and so nice to our panelists. It really takes a lot to come here and to be so vulnerable to share your personal story. And it's great to have like people who are acknowledging what we're saying and understanding what we're going through. Personally, I'm very passionate about spreading this message because I believe that a child's youth is one of the most important times in their life as they, develop into a person. And educators, obviously, you guys shape that growth. And so it's really important that you're able to help us in the best way possible. I hope that you all begin conversation about how to implement the ideas that were mentioned in today's session at your schools and your after-school programs. Like Isabel said, we invite you to attend part 2 of this webinar, which is on October 27th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This will be focusing on educators, and we will listen to them share their best practices and innovative program models for supporting students with incarcerated parents. Also, if you enjoyed this webinar and you want to learn more, visit the CS Support Us website and follow SUSU on social media just to get like a better understanding of everything that we're saying here. Again, thank you guys so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.